The pirates? I am so sorry. My brain clunked hard and remained blank today. Sorry. All right, once or twice is a coincidence. 3 times means we need to actually pay attention. Why are there giant axiom using whales at every potential site? Victor asks as Professor Valiance calls in to inform him what's happened. That's a very good question, and I'm not taking my students to another until we know why, and better yet, how to get around them safely and reliably, Professor Valiance says before she feels the axiom twist and bend as Franklin returns. The mangled and broken remains of the sensor array are tucked under his left arm, with numerous broken-off pieces held in his right. It took a shot at the sensors? She asks in mild despair. It got a bullseye with its shot at the sensors. I'll assume that means it was directly on target. Yes, I think I might be able to do something, but if it got hit too soon, it might not have gotten the information to begin with. Even if I can rewind something along its own timeline, if it never had the traits you want, then there's no way to get it, Franklin says as he sets the sensor down on the dock. The ship was undergoing repairs and the students were just milling around as everyone was recovering from looking death right in the eye. Not everyone has a taste for that kind of fun. I'm not sure. It usually takes about a minute to do a proper scan of an area. I doubt it had the time, Professor Valiance says, and he nods. Still, even if all we get is usable equipment out of this, then it's worthwhile, he answers before focusing, then pausing. I really need to memorize that formulae. Professor Valiance snickers before he taps something out against his palm and then nods as that apparently helped him remember. Then everyone nearby feels it as the axiom grows dense and powerful. The winds whip around him and he focuses his gaze on the broken sensor. It snaps back into place, if breaking in reverse, and with the axiom feeling thick and syrupy, he crouches down and accesses the device. Scan aborted. It didn't even reach 20% before being shattered, Franklin says in a disgusted tone. Sorry. Not your fault, Professor Valiance says, and Franklin considers. I'm going to need that list again. The one of all the sites I found, 3 out of 3, having mirage whales near them cannot be a coincidence. Baron Strom said the same thing. He would. The man is as solid as bedrock. Franklin notes absently as he pulls out his communicator. He looks over his text and then copies things into notes. Right, time to get started. He transfers the data into a locator app that spits out the basic math on how far he is from the other sites. Then a chunk of the local axiom starts whirring and he's gone. But things are very close to being null. He drops through the water, his brand fully empowered and keeping him dry as he falls directly over the detected metals. He turns around but doesn't have to. The mirage whale is near enough that its heartbeat can be heard through the water. He then checks the calculations before hitting the bottom and vanishes just as he lands. On his next warp, he lands on the head of a mirage whale and it gives off a confused sound. Sorry! Then he's away to the next site, which has him just barely avoiding landing on a mirage whale. It catches a glimpse of him as he focuses on the next, fully expecting to be nearby a mirage whale when he emerges next. He is. He arrives in the middle of its whale song, and it's so close by that he can feel the song thrumming in his bones. He teleports out even faster than before. It takes another 20 minutes before he returns to his starting point and lands in a crouch on the dock before rising up slowly. He notices a descending Airbus and stares for a moment before shaking it off and facing Professor Valiance, who was trying to make something of the less than 20% scan. All of them. We've got mirage whales over each and every potential site, he says. Then we can use that, she says, and he nods. If the whales know where they all are, then we don't need to scan for sites, just look for whales. But getting them away so we can get a proper look is going to be a pain. Or we use another, slower, more delicate, and less aggravating sensor system. They simply leave when lower power scanners are used. So we use those over a very long period and simply provoke them to leave rather than violence, Professor Valiance says. Right. Still, that seems to be everything on my end. You've got transport, you've got what information you need and a plan. Am I needed anymore? No, you're fine. All right, see you later. And keep the coin just in case. Franklin says with a salute and then he vanishes. He's back at home shortly after with his mind wrapped up in thought. A very symmetrical scene plays out as Ichi and Nichi rise up in perfect unison and sway over to him. It's like there's a mirror in his vision as the identical twins reach over and pulls him down. Trapped in thought? Nichi asks. Sort of. You know how I found a bunch of different places there might be labs and other things like that? Yes, Ichi replies. Well, it turns out the easier way is to follow the whales. Mirage whales are all over the place in such places, and they do not like scans for some reason. What don't they like about it? I think a sound, but if it is, then it's a level of sound beyond what I can hear. I doubt it's something visual, and it would be odd if it was an axiom issue. Franklin notes before thinking, but not. On a different topic, what did they really think about the green? It does offset your hair, doesn't it? Nishi asks, and Ichi grins. Didn't you hear the call? He tried to get them to just say yes, just to be nice. While sweet, that's not what we needed. We needed a real answer, Nichi remarks. But girls, I was a little concerned with. That's your problem. Too many distractions, Ichi says. Now sit down and relax, you goofy man. We tracked your communicator. You've looped the world 3 times. Without shoes. Relax. The moment he tries to open his mouth next, he finds a finger on his lips, and he's guided back to the table to sit. So, did you fight the big bad whale? No, just got everyone out of danger and got the stuff back. The platform they were flying on was badly damaged though, so they're down some funds, Franklin remarks. He then starts to stand and is pulled back in. But I can help the situation, and you're not the answer to all the world's problems, love. Relax. But stuff to do, he protests. First thing to do is Nichi, Nichi says and gets a look from her sister. No, it's Ichi, Ichi replies, and there's some light glaring over the front of him before he wraps his arms around both girls and pulls them close. Fine. If the real priority is time with the wives, then it's time with the wives. I won't argue or run from my responsibilities. Oh, a responsibility, is it? A duty, are we? If we want to be more than just mutual booty calls, there is a duty, a responsibility. You to me and me to you. Isn't that the deal? It is, but it's a strange way of hearing it, Nichi says. I'm never normal, Nichi, he says, and she gives him an odd look. What? How? She asks. How what? How do you always tell? We even traded clothes. Not your axiom presence, Franklin remarks before turning to the other. Isn't that right, Ichi? It is right, but... Ichi is interrupted as a little alarm goes off, and all 3 of them check their communicators. Looks like Mirage wants to trade out, Nichi says. Well, there may not be a lot of little kitties, but it's still draining. Franklin says, getting up and pushed back down into his seat even as he rises. Oh no, Mirage needs some time with you after taking care of the babes today. Give the girls some cuddles. But both of you, we've got arms aplenty to care for them. We're bringing them out, Nichi says, and Franklin sighs before nodding. Good now, Ichi begins, and Franklin is already out of position in space and time and walking out of the room to see the children. You don't have to, Nichi assures him. I want to, Franklin replies. Oh, okay then, she replies, and they quickly catch up even as he opens the door to the nursery. A tiny human boy is being bounced by a large reptile woman with shimmering scales that are trying to fade out of sight, but are being routinely denied by a set of kuda rings on the tiny horns on her head. His little traces of hair are a match for the bright tropical feathers of his mother. Hey, someone getting tired? Franklin asks, sweeping in, and the baby is handed to him, and Mirage shifts around to grab him from behind and taking a deep breath. Hello, Junior. You've been out to sea? Mirage asks. It's kind of hard to avoid it with the way this world is shaped. Franklin replies, even as his son wriggles in his grip. The little guy was a great deal stronger than a babe his age normally was, but he was mentally still in the same place. He also had a tendency to phase out of sight. Not that he can go completely transparent. Any regrets yet? Never. If I knew this is what I get by lurking around that day at Ashen Ducks, I would haven't stalked you. I'd have jumped on you. Don't ask for knife work. You got to commit for that, Franklin remarks, and he gets a flick in the back of the head by the cloaking woman, even as Nishi and Ichi are cooing over the babies, who are all clearly well-fed, happy, dry, and warm. The cartoon playing on the far wall is clearly working as edutainment and keeping them all distracted. It's been a full day of diapers, bottles, binkies, and goofy cartoons, Mirage says, even as she pulls herself up to be properly hanging onto Franklin's back. Her head slinks over his shoulder, and she looks down and smiles at her son. Worth it? Yes, it is. Surprised everyone that we'd gotten so lucky in our first round. If this keeps up, everyone will have a son sooner rather than later. Franklin remarks as he uses Axiom to have a little ball of light roll off the top of his head, ramp off his nose, and start bouncing around Junior. Bless his heart, the little fellow actually tries to catch it. Tries being the operative word, as while Junior knows that moving the arm might do something. Opening his little clenched fist is not a part of the process, as he understands it. Franklin leans down and gives the little man a kiss on the brow. There's a gurgling squeal that sounds happy enough, so he'll assume it's not a protest. "Oh, we got a stinker," Ichi states as she finds out that a little snick girl has a soiled diaper. "Oh dear, need some help?" Franklin offers. "No, you stick with the little human. Coming from the rabbis tending to a snicked? No pointing out my enormous hypocrisy." Ichi finishes the joke and Franklin decides to take it further. "Did you hear that? It's the word of the day. Hip-ok-ra. See? Hypocrisy." Franklin says to Junior, whose response is to shove his own fist into his mouth to gum on. "Will you do the same if she were to swear in here?" Nishi asks in amusement. "Oh, by the time she makes a slip up like that, I assume our little ones will be learning all sorts of words, whether we like to or not," Franklin says, and Mirage lets out a light laugh. "You have an unusually high opinion of pirates." "Perhaps. I mean, it's not like you have tried to and succeeded in dragging an entire world out of hell, freeing slaves, spreading wealth, building infrastructure, and otherwise acting like morally upright citizens or something." Franklin jokes and then lets out a little oof as Junior gives him an accidental, slobbery punch. This is deemed hilarious by the baby in his arms.